The knock at midnight, the wind outside howled like a wild beast. Snow slammed against the steel bunker door, making the walls shake. Inside, he sat alone. Wrapped in a thick coat, staring at the flickering heater flame. He hadn't seen another living being in weeks, maybe months, out here. In the frozen wastelands, it was just him, his bunker, and silence. Then it came a knock, not loud, not strong. Just soft and shaky. He froze, not sure if he imagined it. Another knock followed. Barely louder than the wind, but this time, he was sure someone was out there. He grabbed his old rifle and walked slowly to the door. Cautious but curious. No one should be out there in this weather, not unless they were desperate or mad. He opened the small hatch and looked through the narrow window. What he saw made his breath catch. A figure stood in the snow, shivering violently. She looked young, maybe a teen or a little older. Her skin was a strange, pale blue, and her hair clung to her face, wet and frozen. She wore a silver cloth that barely covered her body. Now torn and stuck to her skin, she looked up at him with wide glowing eyes full of fear and pain. Her lips were purple, cracked from the cold, and she said nothing. Instead, she lifted a shaking hand and showed him a note. He slowly opened the door just enough to reach out and take it. The wind hit him like knives. Freezing his fingers in seconds, he pulled back quickly and shut the door tight. The note was wet, almost ruined, but one line was still readable. Written in crooked letters, "Warm me." He stared at it, heart pounding. She hadn't begged, hadn't spoken, just held out this one quiet plea. A part of him screamed to ignore it, to stay safe. But another part couldn't stop seeing her face. Those broken eyes? He sighed and moved. To unlock the door, snow rushed in as he opened it fully. The girl stumbled forward and nearly fell. He caught her in his arms, shocked by how cold her skin was. Like holding ice wrapped in skin, she didn't speak, didn't cringe, clung to his coat like a frightened child. He closed the door behind them and carried her to the heater. She was weightless, fragile. He set her down on the thick rug and wrapped 2 old blankets around her, then turned the heater up to full power. The flames danced, casting a warm glow on her shaking body. She looked around the bunker metal walls, scattered tools, canned food, and a single chair. Nothing special, but to her, it was shelter. She reached out a hand toward the flame, holding it close, but not touching. He watched, confused, as her skin slowly shifted from pale blue to a soft lavender. Her breathing, once ragged, began to calm. Still, she hadn't said a word. He sat across from her, unsure what to do next. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "No answer. Can you understand me?" She blinked and tilted her head slightly, then nodded barely. He pointed at himself. "I'm Alex." He waited, but she just hugged the blanket tighter. She pointed at the heater, then touched her chest, then her lips, then the flame again. He didn't understand, but he felt it. She wasn't asking for food or water. She needed warmth to survive. Not just comfort, but real heat, like fuel. He nodded slowly. "Stay here. You're safe." She looked at him again, and this time, her eyes weren't scared, they were thankful. He stood up and searched the storage room, bringing her dry socks, a thermal shirt, and an old thermos with warm water. She accepted them silently, trying to put on the clothes with shaking hands. He helped her gently, making sure she stayed wrapped in the blankets. For the next hour, she didn't move far from the heater. She didn't talk, but her eyes stayed on him, watchful. Curious, he didn't know who she was, where she came from, or how she survived this far out. But she wasn't human, that much was clear, yet she didn't feel like a threat when the heater's light dimmed a little. She scooted closer to it. Then, slowly, she picked up the note again, the one that said, "Warm me." She pointed at it, then at him, then placed her hand over her heart. He didn't understand the full meaning, but he felt it. She was asking for more than just physical heat. She was asking to stay, to be protected. Alex looked at the frozen door, then back at her. He nodded once, firmly. "All right." He whispered, "You can stay," and in the silence of the snow-covered night, two strangers sat by the heater, one human, one alien, both seeking warmth in a world that had forgotten them. The fire and the questions the fire crackled gently. In the corner, Alex watched the girl closely, sitting just a few feet away. She hadn't said a word all night, but her eyes, bright and glowing faintly, spoke without sound. She was warmer now. Her color returning slowly, her fingers no longer shook. Her breathing was calm but deep, like someone still recovering from a storm inside. She pulled the thermal shirt tighter around her small frame, her skin almost blending into the fabric. Alex placed a can of hot water beside her. She touched it with both hands and held it to her chest like it was treasure. She looked up at him, her eyes questioning, curious, and still full of something he couldn't name. Not fear, not exactly. Something more like waiting, like she had seen this moment in a dream. Alex sat back, rubbing his hands together for warmth. He cleared his throat, unsure where to begin. "So, you're not from around here, huh?" he said with a half smile. She tilted her head like she was trying to understand, then slowly shook it. He stood up and walked over to the work table, picked up an old touchscreen device, cracked, but still working. He opened a blank screen and typed a question. "Where are you from?" He turned the screen to her. She leaned in, stared at the glowing letters, then slowly reached out and traced a shape on the screen with her fingertip. Not a word, but a circle with 3 dots inside it. He stared at the symbol, not recognizing it. She tapped the circle again, then touched her chest. "My home." He guessed. She nodded. Just once, Alex sat down beside her again. Heart still heavy with questions, she was clearly intelligent, clearly alien. But why was she alone, wandering a dead zone in the middle of a killing storm? And how had she survived until now? She turned to the fogged-up bunker window. With one finger, she began drawing again. First a star, then a long line, then another circle, then a burst symbol that looked like an explosion, then a tiny figure running away. Alex felt a chill that wasn't from the cold. "You escaped," he whispered. The girl looked at him and nodded slowly, a flash of pain in her eyes. He leaned forward. "Did they hurt you?" She hesitated, then lifted her sleeve slightly. Underneath her pale skin showed thin scars, tiny burn marks like wire had once been wrapped tight. Alex clenched his fists. Someone had kept her prisoner. She quickly lowered the sleeve, not wanting. Pity then looked again at the fire and touched her chest. He noticed how her skin seemed to almost drink the heat, not in a metaphorical way, literally, as if her body absorbed thermal energy like a sponge absorbs water. He stared in wonder. "You need heat to survive," he said aloud. She nodded and pointed at him. Then the heater, then the room. Her lips trembled as she whispered in broken English, "Warm. Gives life." It was the first time she had spoken. Her voice was soft, shaky, like wind through glass. Alex leaned in, surprised but hopeful. "You understand me?" She looked confused, then nodded slowly again. "Only a little, but enough." He picked up a pencil and drew a stick figure of himself, then one of her. He drew a fire between them and drew arrows pointing toward her. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurts to look at, like someone who had forgotten how it feels. Then she reached over and drew a third stick figure, tall, with jagged arms and no face. She put an X through it, a threat. He whispered. Her eyes darkened. She nodded once, firm and slow. Then she drew 5 more of those jagged figures, all surrounding her stick figure. And in the middle, a cage. Alex swallowed hard. Whoever had her, whatever they weren't just chasing, They were hunting. He looked at her again, really looked. She wasn't just a girl, she was a survivor. And now she was asking for his help, not just to stay warm, but to stay alive. He took a deep breath and stood. "If they come," he said, "they'll have to get through me first." She stared at him, eyes wide and wet with something like hope. He walked to the door, checked the locks again, then glanced outside. Snow still fell, but something felt different now, like danger. Had already found them. When he turned back, she had curled up near the heater. The can of warm water still pressed to her chest, but before closing her eyes, she looked at him and mouthed one more word. Safe. Alex sat near her, rifle across his lap. The fire danced quietly between them. Outside, the wind screamed louder than ever, but inside, something new had begun to grow, not just warmth, but trust. Symbols in the steam morning didn't come with sunshine, it came with ice. The bunker's windows were fogged, the air thin and cold. Alex woke to the soft sound of breathing. She was still there, curled up beside the dying heater. But something had changed overnight. The girl's skin now shimmered with a faint silver hue. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from focus. She stood before the bunker's foggy window, tracing something with her finger, not random line symbols, shapes, a kind of language. Alex sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He walked closer, careful not to startle her. She was deep in concentration. Her fingertip glided over the fogged glass, as if guided by memory, not thought. "What's that?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped aside and let him see. There, drawn in perfect form, was a map of stars, planets. Curved lines that intersected like a cosmic path. At the center of it was the symbol she drew the night before, the circle with 3 dots. Her home then. Below that, she drew something else. A cage, but this one was different. Had fire inside. Then figures, small and shaking, trapped behind the bars. And finally, a tall figure with claws for arms and no face. It stood outside the cage, holding what looked like wires, or maybe whips. Alex's chest tightened. "They use your kind like fuel," he said, "don't they?" She slowly nodded, her expression dark and tired. She picked up the note. She came with the one that said, "Warm me," and placed it flat on the table. Then she pulled a small device from inside her silver cloth. It was cracked, flickering, half dead. She pressed a button, and a weak hologram buzzed to life and image of her people. They stood around fires, not burning them, but drawing life from them, hugging one another to stay alive. She touched the projection and whispered softly, "Gone." Alex swallowed hard. Her planet, her people taken, caged, maybe destroyed. She was the last ember of a world snuffed out, and now she was here, in his bunker, scratching memories into steamed glass to make someone understand. Then her eyes widened. She quickly erased the drawings and turned off the device. She ran to the door. Frozen in fear, Alex followed. Confused, she pointed at the corner security monitor. Trembling, he looked at the screen, outside, in the snow. A figure stood watching the bunker, tall, motionless, faceless. It didn't knock, didn't move, just stared. Alex grabbed his rifle, heart pounding. She backed away, covering her mouth, eyes full of panic. Then she pointed at the fogged window again and wrote one word with her finger: tracker. He stared at the monitor, no footsteps, no movement. It was like the thing floated there in the snow, watching, waiting. "Is it one of them?" he asked. She nodded, then pulled at his sleeve, urging him away from the window. He followed, locking every latch on the door, reinforcing the shutters. The fire in the bunker seemed smaller now, like it felt the cold presence outside. She sat by the heater, knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly. Alex sat beside her, gripping his rifle. "What does it want?" She looked at him and answered in a whisper, "Take me back." He clenched his jaw. "Not happening," he said. "They're not taking you anywhere." She stared at him, lips trembling. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and placed her hand over his chest. "Warm heart," she said, softly, then pulled her hand away. As if the words had cost her everything. Alex didn't know what he felt in that moment. Anger, sorrow, maybe something deeper. She was more than a refugee. She was a living memory of something beautiful and broken. Outside, the tracker didn't move. Inside, the bunker grew quieter, but the space between them was no longer cold. It held something new, not just warmth, but promise. Visitors in the snow was silent for hours, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that wrapped around your chest and made it hard to breathe. The figure outside never moved, never blinked, just stood in the snow like a statue left behind by death. Alex barely left the monitor. He kept his rifle nearby. Watching, waiting, the girl sat by the heater, still weak but more alert now. Her eyes never left the screen, as if she could feel the thing's presence through the walls. Then, just before nightfall, the tracker vanished. No footsteps, no noise, just gone. But Alex didn't relax. Not even when the girl whispered, "Gone." In a shaky voice, he'd been a soldier once, and he knew better. Scouts always came before the real storm. He scanned the snowfield through the scope of his rifle, and that's when he saw movement at the far ridge. Not one, not two, 5 shadows, tall, hunched, carrying strange tools strapped to their backs. He stepped back from the window, locking the shutter. "They're here," he said. Voice calm but hard. The girl looked up and stood, legs wobbling slightly. Then she walked to the window and drew a line on the wall with her finger. She drew 5 figures with long limbs, then circled one and drew sharp blades in its hands. "Hunter leader," she whispered. Alex felt the blood drain from his face, suddenly. The ground shook slightly. A dull boom echoed through the snowfield. The girl flinched and grabbed Alex's arm. He stared at the monitor. A strange black machine had landed near the edge of the forest. Its legs unfolded like a spider's, and smoke poured from its sides. Then, a large door opened, and more figures stepped out. They wore suits dark gray, armored, faceless, but their movements weren't human, too smooth, too quiet. And in their hands shock batons, restraint wires, and heat-sensing scanners. They weren't searching for survivors. They were hunting warmth. Alex turned to the girl. "They can track your body heat," he whispered. She nodded, tears brimming in her glowing eyes. "No hide." "Unless cold," she said with effort. He looked at her, horrified. "You'd have to freeze." She looked down, silent, then reached for her thin silver cloak and wrapped it tightly. Stepping away from the fire, Alex grabbed her hand. "No," he said, firm. "We'll find another way." He ran to his gear cabinet, throwing it open. Pulled out heat-blocking blankets, old thermal suits, and emergency flare packs. He wrapped her in the special material, layer by layer, covering every inch. Then placed her inside the bunker storage compartment, the coldest part of the shelter. "It'll hurt," he said softly, "but you'll survive." She looked at him, lips trembling, and whispered, "You stay warm," then closed the lid herself. Alex turned off the main heater, switched to backup power, and lit only one emergency candle. He sat by the door, rifle ready, listening. The snow outside had gone quiet again, but not in a good way. It was the kind of quiet right before something broke through. Hours passed, maybe more. Then clang, a sharp metallic knock shook the door. Alex aimed his rifle, finger on the trigger. Another knock followed, but this one came from the roof. They were surrounding the bunker through the small side camera. He saw one of them press a device to the wall. It blinked red. Then green. They were scanning the heat signatures. Alex stood still, barely breathing. Inside the storage compartment, the girl didn't move at all, her heat completely hidden beneath the layers of cold sealing fabric. The scanner blinked again, then dimmed. No target found. One of the hunters let out a high-pitched screech. It wasn't language, it was frustration. Then, just like that, they turned and began moving back toward their ship, silent and slow, but leaving behind heavy, frozen footprints. Alex waited, not moving, not speaking, only when the ship lifted off and vanished into the sky did he move. He ran to the storage bay and opened the lid. She lay curled up, her skin icy, but her chest still moved barely. He wrapped her in blankets, lit the fire again, and held her close. "You made it," he whispered, voice cracking. Her fingers twitched, her eyes opened just enough to see his face, and for the first time she smiled, not out of joy, but because she was safe for now. Outside, the storm began again. But inside, the fire returned, and so did the will to survive. The meltdown, the fire crackled softly, but it wasn't enough. Alex kept feeding it broken furniture and old crates. Anything that would burn. The girl was wrapped in 3 blankets, curled near the flames, but her lips were still pale. Her body had survived the freezing, but something inside her had weakened. She barely spoke now, only short whispers, broken words. Her glow, the soft shimmer under her skin, had faded to almost nothing. He touched her forehead, then her fingers. They were cold again, too cold. Alex checked the heat core. It hummed weakly, struggling. The backup coils were failing, the old wires brittle with age. It wasn't built for this long, not for 2 people. Especially not someone who needed warmth like food. "Come on, stay with me," he whispered, voice shaking. He placed her hands directly near the heating coil. But she gently pulled away. "Don't waste." "For me," she breathed, barely audible. "No," he said firmly. "You don't get to give up." But her eyes were closing again, not from sleep, but from something deeper, like a flickering candle about to go out. Then came the first spark. Pop. The lights dimmed, the heater hissed once, then fell silent. The core died. "No, no, no." Alex muttered, rushing to the wires. He ripped open the floor panel, sparks flying as he tried to bypass the main circuit, but the system was fried. Overloaded, exhausted, his hands trembled, his breath visible in the air. He turned to her. She was lying still now, her eyes half closed, her chest rose only slightly. The glow was almost gone. He dropped beside her, desperate. "I don't know what else to do," he whispered. His fingers brushed hers, and even then, he could feel it. She was fading. Then she moved barely. Her hand reached for the heating core. It was still warm from before, the metal glowing dull red. She placed her palm on it, and for a moment the metal pulsed. Her veins lit up faintly, glowing gold beneath her skin. "What are you doing?" Alex asked. She looked at him with soft eyes and whispered, "Exchange." Then she pressed her other hand against his chest. Warmth flowed from the core, through her, and into him. He gasped. The warmth was real. Not just body heat. It was pure energy, pulsing like a heartbeat. It filled his chest, cleared his head, made him forget the cold for one beautiful second. But she grew colder. Her glow dimmed again. She was transferring her last strength into him. "No, stop," he said, pulling back. "You'll die." She shook her head weakly. Warm heart. Still can save. He didn't understand till he saw her reach into the bundle of cloth beside her. She pulled out a small crystal, blue and cracked, glowing faintly. "This core from home," she whispered, then placed it in his hands. Alex looked at the object, pulsed once. Then again. It was alive, some kind of alien battery, or heat crystal. He understood now. This was what she had used to survive before the bunker, and now it was his last hope to restart the heat. He rushed to the broken core, ripped open the panel, and slammed the crystal into place. The system didn't respond for 1 second to nothing. Then a low hum began. The coils turned red, and the fire inside came back to life. Warmth spread through the room again. Slowly but surely, Alex turned back. She was lying still, eyes closed, face peaceful. For one terrible moment, he thought he was too late, but then her fingers moved. A faint breath escaped her lips. He rushed over and wrapped her in his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it." The heater glowed again. The warmth returned. But the cost, he had seen it. She had given part of herself to keep him alive. Not just warmth, trust, hope. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside the bunker, two hearts now burned brighter than any storm, not because of wires, not because of fire, but because one alien girl believed the human heart could melt even. The coldest night, her true nature, the storm, had passed by morning. The wind no longer screamed, and the snow outside had settled into soft hills. But inside the bunker, something even more powerful had shifted. Not the fire, not the air, but the space between them. The girl slept quietly, wrapped in the blanket he had layered with emergency heat packs. Her glow had returned, faint, soft, but steady. Alex sat beside her, eyes heavy with exhaustion. He hadn't slept in almost 2 days, but he didn't care. Every time she took a slow breath, it reminded him that she was alive, that she had chosen to live and to let him live. When her eyes finally opened, they didn't look afraid. They looked calm. She sat up slowly, her body still weak, but no longer trembling. Alex poured warm water from a thermal flask and handed it to her. She took it, nodded gently, then drank after. A long silence. She looked up, and finally, she spoke clearer than before. "You are good flame." Alex blinked, surprised by the progress in her speech. "I'm what?" She tapped her chest, then pointed at his. "Your warmth. Not just heat." Then she placed her hand over her heart and whispered, "It calls." He leaned forward, puzzled but curious. "Calls to what?" She closed her eyes and exhaled softly, then reached behind her neck and pressed something under her skin. A tiny mark glowed beneath the surface, a glowing triangle with a spiral inside. Alex stared, stunned. That's not just a birthmark, is it?" She shook her head slowly. "It is bond mark," she said. "My kind. We are born cold, but choose warmth." She stood, wobbling slightly, then walked to the fogged glass again. She traced to like herself, glowing softly, and another, like a human. Between them, she drew a flame, then placed her hand over the drawing. Those who share heat. Soul joins. Alex felt a strange chill, not from fear, but from something deeper. She wasn't just feeding off his heat, she had connected with it. With him, he looked down at his own chest, where she had touched before, where he had felt. The warmth traveled through his ribs and into his bones. It wasn't just survival, it was bonding. "You mean?" He started, but couldn't finish the sentence. She turned to him, her glowing eyes kind and tired. "Yes," she said, "you warmed me. Now I know you." Then she smiled softly. "And you know me?" Alex felt his throat tighten. He had been alone for so long, no family left, no calls from the outside world. This bunker had been his cave, his cell, and now this strange, half-frozen girl had melted right into his life, with no name, no past, but a presence that made his heart beat louder. He stepped forward. "What do I call you?" he asked gently. She paused, thinking, then slowly traced 4 letters on the table's dusty surface. "Seel, sail." He whispered. She nodded and placed her hand gently over his. "You." "Alex," she smiled, then tilted her head. "Name." "Warm." He chuckled softly. unsure why he felt like laughing and crying at the same time. "So what happens now?" he asked. Sail looked toward the door, then back at him. "They come back." "Always," she said. "Hunters want heat, not heart." Her expression turned serious. "But bond makes me strong." She pulled her sleeve up again and showed him the glowing triangle. It pulsed now, brighter than before. Alex frowned. "What does that mean?" She looked at him, eyes burning like embers. "If I burn, I burn with you," she said. "Not alone." His chest tightened again this time. Not from fear, but from something dangerous. Something like love, but deeper. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was survival-born connection, forged in fire and ice. Real, raw, and terrifyingly beautiful. Outside, the skies were clearing, but they both knew it wouldn't last. The hunters had tasted her trail, and they would return. But now she wasn't just a runaway. She was bonded to a man who had nothing to lose, and everything to protect in the bunker that once held only shadows. Two souls now glowed, warming each other and preparing for whatever came next. His choice in the cold. The skies above the wasteland darkened again, but this time it wasn't snow that was coming. It was them. Alex stood at the edge of the bunker's hatch, staring into the horizon. Through his scope, he saw it, a dark shape in the sky, moving fast, like a scar slicing across the clouds. Their ship, sleek, silent. Deadly behind him, Sail stood still, wrapped in heat-resistant fabric. Her glowing mark pulsing with each heartbeat. She wasn't shaking anymore. She wasn't weak. But Alex could tell this bond was costing her something. Something deep. "They come fast," she whispered. He nodded, not looking away from the scope. "They always do," he replied. He had been preparing since the last encounter. Rewired the heater, set explosive charges near the ridge. Hidden flares, but he wasn't sure it would be enough. Because they weren't just hunting a body, they were hunting a bond. Sail walked forward and took his hand. "I go," she said. "They want me, not you." He turned to her, jaw clenched. "No," he said. Firm. "You're not giving yourself up." She smiled sadly. "I was born to die in cold." She whispered, "But you gave me fire." He shook his head. "No one else is going to touch you, not while I'm breathing." A loud boom shook the ground. The ship had landed nearby. Snow flew into the air like smoke. The wind changed direction, pushing hot metallic air toward the bunker. Alex could hear the mechanical footsteps now. They were here. He rushed to the control panel and activated the heat surge. Outside, the ground sensors glowed red. He had set a trap. As the hunters approached, he triggered the blast. A wave of heat exploded upward, just enough to blind their scanners. He grabbed Sail's hand. "Now," he shouted, "run." They sprinted across the back tunnel he had carved in the ice, small, narrow, but just big enough for two. The bunker behind them exploded as the second trap went off. But the hunters were fast, too fast. One leaped over the fire line and landed just behind them. Sail turned, eyes glowing bright now. She raised her hand and stepped forward. The air around her shimmered, her body radiating heat so intense the snow turned to steam. Alex shouted, "No, don't burn out." But she didn't stop. The hunter froze mid-step's body sensors overloaded. It collapsed, sparks flying from its limbs. But Sail fell to her knees. Smoke curled from her skin, her light fading fast. Alex dropped beside her, wrapped his arms around her. "You don't get to leave me," he whispered. She opened her eyes slowly. "Bond breaks." "If I die," she said, voice almost gone. "Then don't," he said, his voice cracking. "Stay, please." He reached into his coat and pulled the last crystal, hidden, small, fragile, the one she gave him before. He pressed it to her chest. "Take it back," he said. "Take all of it." Her body shook, refusing at first. But the bond, they had no control over it now. Her heart pulled the warmth from the crystal. From him, and the glow returned, soft at first, then strong. Like a fire coming back from ashes, she gasped, then clung to him. "I stay," she whispered. He held her tighter. "You're not just staying," he said. "You're living." Far above them, the ship rose into the sky, unempty. The hunters left confused, sensors disrupted. Unable to track her anymore, the bond had changed her heat signature. She was no longer just sail. She was something new. Later, they returned to the remains of the bunker, burned, broken but standing. They rebuilt, slowly, a heater, a new roof, extra blankets. But they didn't just fix a shelter. They built a home, and every night, when the cold winds howled, Alex would hold her hand, and she would whisper, "My warmth is yours, because..." In a world that had forgotten both of them, they had remembered each other. And in that memory, in that fire, they chose to live together.